Hey guys, tonight we're going to peel back the curtain on one of history's most misunderstood professions. We're not walking through marbled halls or sitting in on a Senate debate. Instead, we're going behind the scenes, past the roaring crowds and the 5 minutes of bloody glory, to explore the other 23 hours and 55 minutes in the life of a Roman gladiator. This isn't the story of chiseled heroes you see in movies, it's the gritty, monotonous, and often bleak reality of what it meant to be a gladiator slave. Frankly, based on their daily routine, you probably wouldn't last today. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. As always, I love seeing where our little community is listening from. So feel free to drop your city and the current time in the comments below. It's always fascinating to see us all connecting from different corners of the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you become aware of is the cold. It's not a biting winter cold, but a deep, damp chill that seems to seep out of the very stones around you. It's in your bones before you even open your eyes. You're relying on something coarse and lumpy, a sack filled with straw, maybe, and it does little to cushion you from the hard floor beneath. There's a faint, musty smell in the air, a mix of stale sweat, damp earth, and something vaguely metallic. This is your new reality. You force your eyes open. The darkness isn't total. A single, thin shaft of gray morning light filters down from a tiny, barred slit of a window set impossibly high in the wall. It illuminates nothing but a swirling cloud of dust motes, dancing lazily in the beam. Your eyes adjust, and the shape of your world slowly emerges from the gloom. It's a box. A small, stone box, perhaps twice the length of your body and barely wide enough to stretch your arms out. The walls are rough, uneven stone, cool and unforgiving to the touch. The door is thick, solid wood, reinforced with iron straps. There's no handle on your side. There's only a small, grated peephole and the heavy thud of a bolt you heard slide into place from the outside last night. This isn't a room. This is a cell. You are in a ludus, a gladiator school, which you are quickly realizing is just a more prestigious name for a prison. You are property now, an investment, and this cell is where the investment is stored when it's not being trained or repaired. You sit up, the straw rustling beneath you. Every muscle in your body aches, a dull throb from the long journey that brought you here. As you stare at the bare walls, you notice something. Scratched into the stone, likely with a shard of rock or a smuggled nail, are markings left by a previous occupant. You run your fingers over them. There's a crudely drawn palm frond, the symbol of victory. Next to it, the series of vertical lines, tally marks counting something. Wins, kills, days. Survived. You also see a name, Flamme, etched with a surprising amount of care. It's a small act of defiance, a ghost of a man insisting he was more than just a body in a cell. Archaeologists find graffiti like this in the ruins of gladiatorial barracks in places like Pompeii, little whispers of humanity shouting against the silence. I was here. I was desired. I conquered. It's a strange, fleeting connection to the man who slept on the same patch of cold stone before you. You wonder about your own origins, the life you had before this. It feels like a dream now, whether you were a prisoner of war, a condemned criminal, or a desperate man who sold himself into this life for a chance to clear a debt. It no longer matters. The past is a foreign country. Your future is this stone box in the sand of the training yard. A distant clang, the sound of a heavy bell being struck, echoes through the complex. It's a dull, commanding sound that seems to make the very air vibrate. You hear muffled groans and the sounds of stirring from adjacent cells. The day has begun. The thought of what it might hold sends a fresh wave of cold dread through you. This existence is a strange paradox, a concept historians still grapple with. The Roman world would both idolize you on the arena floor and despise you in society. You are simultaneously a sports hero and human refuse. They will cheer your name and forbid you from being buried in a proper cemetery. The very origins of this spectacle are a subject of debate. The traditional story, told by ancient writers, is that it all began as a solemn Etruscan funeral rite, a human sacrifice to honor a dead noble. But did it really evolve so directly from a sacred ritual into mass entertainment? Some historians argue the connection is more tenuous, that the style of fighting points to different Italic traditions, a celebration of martial prowess that lost its way. It's a question no one can definitively answer. Was this whole bloody business a perversion of religion, or was it always just a sport that needed a respectable origin story? The heavy bolt on your door scrapes loudly, the gut-wrenching sound of metal on metal, the sound of your day starting, the sound of ownership. You get to your feet, your heart pounding a slow, heavy rhythm against your ribs. The door creaks open, revealing the silhouetted figure of a guard. He doesn't speak. He doesn't have to. His job is simply to open the cage. Your job is to step out of it. You step out of the cell and into a long, narrow courtyard. The air is still cold, and the high walls of the barracks block out the rising sun, leaving the entire area submerged in a dreary, gray shadow. Other men are emerging from their own cells, shuffling into a ragged line in the center of the yard. There are dozens of you. A motley collection of humanity, a living testament to the vastness of the Roman Empire. You see powerful, pale-skinned Gauls with braided hair, weary Iberians with dark, weary eyes, and broad-shouldered Germans who seem to dwarf everyone around them. Some, like you, look new, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and confusion. Others have a practiced weariness about them. They move with a kind of resigned efficiency, their faces blank masks that betray nothing. These are the veterans. They know the routine. Guards, armed with simple cudgels, patrol the perimeter. They don't shout or issue commands. Their presence is enough. Their job isn't to inspire fear, but to enforce order, to remind everyone that this is a controlled environment. At the head of the courtyard stands a man who is clearly not a guard or a gladiator. He is dressed in a simple but clean tunic and holds a wax tablet and a stylus. He is the lector, the reader, or administrator, the man who keeps the books. He is the one who transforms flesh and blood into assets and liabilities. The bell chimes again, a single, sharp note that cuts off the low murmurs and shuffles. Silence falls over the yard. The lector lifts his tablet and begins the morning roll call, but he doesn't call out names. Not your real names, anyway. The Thracian captured at the Danube. He drones, his voice flat and businesslike. A man steps forward. The lector looks him up and down, makes a note on his tablet, then gives the man his new identity. Sika, he says, naming him after the curved sword of his people. Number 43. The man nods and shuffles back into line, his old identity gone, replaced by a weapon and a number. The administrator moves on. He calls. The Sicilian runaway. The two Britons from the western mine. Each man is reduced to his origin or his crime, then rebranded. This is the moment you cease to be a person and become a commodity. He is not just taking attendance, he is conducting inventory. The owner of this school, the Laniste, is a businessman, and you are his walking, breathing stock. Then his eyes fall on you. He doesn't know your name, and he doesn't care to. The newcomer from yesterday's shipment, he announces. He squints, looking you over with the critical eye of a butcher assessing a side of meat. Strong build, good reach. He makes a few quick scratches on the wax tablet. On that tablet, next to your new designation, he is noting down your purchase price. HES adding the cost of your transport, your food, your future training, and your medical care. Every piece of equipment will be tallied against your name. You are a debt that can only be paid off in the arena. It's a chillingly detailed system. Historians have found records that show just how commodified these men were. Every part of a successful gladiator had value. That weird little fact, the sweat scraped from the skin of a famous champion, known as street regilamento, was collected and sold in tiny vials to wealthy Roman women as a luxury face cream or a potent aphrodisiac. Imagine that, your very grime, your exhaustion, could be bottled and sold as a love potion. The lector finishes his assessment of you. He assigns you a simple, functional name based on the fighting style you'll likely adopt. You repeat it back, your voice hollow in the cold morning air. You have your new name. You have your number. You are officially part of the machine. As you step back, your gaze falls on another man in the line. He stands out because he doesn't look like a prisoner. He carries himself differently, with a strange mix of shame and arrogance. He is Roman. He is an actores, a volunteer. This is one of the most debated aspects of the gladiator world for modern academics. Why would a free citizen, even a poor one, willingly sign a contract, an actor amentum to swear an oath to be burned, chained, beaten, and killed by the sword? Was it for the lure of fame and fortune, or was it the last resort for men buried under such crippling debt that selling their own body and freedom seemed like the only way out? The line between choice and coercion was incredibly thin. For these men, the ludus wasn't a prison sentence, it was a career choice, albeit the most desperate one imaginable. They were seen as even more disgraceful than the slaves, for they had freely chosen their own degradation. The roll call concludes. The lector hands his tablet to a guard, his work done for now. The day's accounting is complete. You stand in the courtyard, stripped of your past, your name, your very identity. You are now just a collection of attributes, a body type, a fighting style, a number on a ledger. You are an investment, and the next part of your day is about to begin, the long, grueling process of honing that investment on the training grounds. A guard gestures with his club, pointing towards a large job, open archway at the far end of the yard. The line of men begins to move, a silent river of condemned souls flowing towards the place where they will learn to die. You take your place in that river, one anonymous face among many, then walk forward. You follow the silent procession through the archway and into the kitchen area. The air here is thick and steamy, filled with the bland, earthy smell of boiling grains. Large, soot-blackened pots bubble over open fires, tended by a few older slaves whose bodies are too broken for the arena. This is the source of the gladiatium sanguine, the famous gladiator's mash. The sight of it is profoundly uninspiring. It's a thick, grayish porridge, a slop of boiled barley, beans, and whatever scraps were available. There's no meat, no fine bread, no wine. You're handed a rough pottery bowl filled with the stuff. It's heavy, dense, and warm. This will be your breakfast, your lunch, and your dinner. This is the fuel that will build the body the Roman public wants to see. You find a space on a long, rough-hewn bench and begin to eat. The texture is gritty, the taste overwhelmingly plain. It's not food meant for pleasure, it's fuel, pure and simple. As you force down the pasty mouthful, you observe the veterans. They eat with a grim determination, shoveling the mash into their mouths without a word. They know what this food is for. This diet, a source of much scholarly fascination, was designed for a very specific purpose, and it was to create the lean, sculpted physiques of modern athletes. Analysis of bones found in a gladiator cemetery in Ephesus confirms what ancient texts hinted at these men. Worker bloating on an industrial scale. They had high bone density, suggesting intense training, but their diet was overwhelmingly vegetarian. This high carbohydrate, high calorie intake was meant to build a layer of subcutaneous fat over their muscles. This layer of fat served a crucial purpose in the arena. It was a natural cushion. It protected underlying nerves, blood vessels, and vital organs from shallow cuts. A slice that might incapacitate a leaner man would only draw blood on a well-fed gladiator, making the fight look more dramatic and spectacular without being immediately fatal. The crowds wanted to see blood, and this diet ensured they would get plenty of it. You are literally being fattened up to make your potential death more entertaining. It's a bizarre and morbid form of sports science, a kind of proactive damage control. You are what you eat, and in this case, you are a walking spectacle designed to bleed beautifully for the paying customers. You look down at the bowl in your hands. It's no longer just a bland meal. It's a tool of the trade, a prescription from your owner, a fellow newcomer sitting near you, a young Celt with wild red hair, grimaces and pushes his bowl away. "I can't eat this," he mutters, his voice low. Before anyone can respond, one of the guards who was observing from the doorway strides over. He doesn't say a word. He simply backhands the Celt across the face, a sharp, cracking sound that makes everyone flinch. The young man sprawls onto the floor, clutching his jaw. The guard points a single, menacing finger at the half-eaten bowl of porridge. The message is clear: eat, or else. The Celt, shame and pain warring on his face, slowly picks himself up, retrieves his bowl, and forces himself to eat, his eyes watering with the effort. This is your first lesson in the absolute nature of control within the ludus. Your body is not your own. What you put into it is not your choice. It belongs to the lawnist, and he will cultivate it as he sees fit. This extends even to their health supplements. Alongside the barley mash, gladiators were often given a drink made from ashen vinegar. This might sound disgusting, but recent analysis of those gladiator bones from Ephesus showed unusually high levels of strontium and calcium. It's led to the theory that this ash drink was a deliberate, ancient form of mineral supplement, a way to fortify their bones and help them heal faster from fractures. It's a strange detail that historians still debate: was it a calculated medical strategy or just a folk remedy that happened to work either way? It paints a picture of a system where every aspect of your physical being was managed and manipulated for maximum performance and durability. You finish your bowl, the thick porridge sitting like a stone in your stomach. You feel sluggish and heavy, not energized. This is the point. You are not being trained to be a sprinter or a marathon runner. You are being trained to be a resilient, damage-absorbing fighting machine. The meal is over as quickly as it began. The guards herd you all to your feet, collecting the empty bowls. There is no rest, no time for digestion. The fuel has been delivered. Now it's time to put the machine to work. The main training yard awaits, and you can already hear the sharp, rhythmic crack of wooden weapons, striking shields echoing from that direction. The dull ache in your muscles from yesterday suddenly feels much more acute. You have been fed. You have been counted. And now, you will be broken down and rebuilt into something worthy of the sand. Leaving the kitchens, you're marched into the main courtyard, and the sheer scale of the operation becomes clear. This is the heart of the ludus, a vast, open-air arena of packed earth and sand, surrounded on all sides by the looming walls of the barracks and armories. It feels like the bottom of a pit. The sky seems distant, a small square of blue in a world of brown and gray. This is where you will spend the majority of your waking hours, a place of sweat, pain, and relentless repetition. The yard is already a hive of activity. Dozens of other gladiators, separated into groups, are engaged in various forms of training. The air hums with the thwack of wood on wood, the grunts of exertion, and the sharp, commanding shouts of the trainers. Your group of newcomers is led to one side, away from the more experienced fighters. Here, a series of wooden poles, called polysingular pallets, are set firmly in the ground. They are roughly the height of a man. This will be your first opponent. It's a mindless, unmoving piece of wood, but for the next several weeks, it will be the sole focus of your aggression. Eamon approaches your group. He is built like a bull, with a scarred, craggy face and a look of profound boredom. Thin whip made of braided leather, which he taps sidely against his thigh. This is a doctor, one of the specialized trainers. He might be a retired gladiator himself, a man who survived long enough to earn his freedom and now sells his expertise back to the system that created him. His own past is a topic of much speculation among gladiators. Some doctores were celebrated champions, Others were merely survivors. How this transition from celebrated fighter to trainer of new slaves affected them psychologically is something we can only guess at. He begins to speak, his voice a low growl. He doesn't introduce himself. He doesn't offer words of encouragement. He explains the absolute basics with a kind of weary contempt. "This palace is your enemy," he says, slapping one of the posts with his hand. "It doesn't feel pain. It doesn't feel pain. It doesn't make mistakes. You will learn to hate it." His instructions are simple. You will strike the post, over and over, learning to aim for the head, the throat, the legs. You will learn the correct footwork, the proper way to hold your shield, the most efficient way to generate power in your swing. It's not about finesse. It's about muscle memory. It's about turning the act of killing into a thoughtless, mechanical reflex. You are each handed your first set of training equipment. It's not the gleaming steel you might have imagined. You get a Rudy's, a heavy wooden sword that is deliberately built to be twice the weight of a real gladius. You also get a scuttle, a large, curved wooden shield, also heavier than its arena counterpart. The weight is staggering. Just holding the sword and shield in a ready stance makes your arms burn. This is the point. The training is designed to be harder than the real thing. It builds stamina and strength, so that when you finally hold the lighter, perfectly balanced steel weapons, they will feel like extensions of your own body. This principle of overload training is a fundamental concept in modern athletics, but here it's being used to prepare you for a life or death struggle. The doctor demonstrates a simple, powerful downward strike against the palace. "Now you," he grunts, pointing at one of the newcomers. The man steps forward, lifts the heavy wooden sword, and swings. It's an awkward, clumsy motion. The sword glances off the side of the post with a dull thud. The doctor sighs, a sound of pure exasperation. He steps forward and, with a flick of his wrist, the leather whip cracks through the air, striking the man across the back of his thighs, stumbling forward. "Again," the doctor says, his voice unchanged. "And do it right. Not through encouragement, but through pain. Every mistake, a poorly angled shield, a slow swing, a step out of place will be corrected with the sting of the whip. It's a brutal but effective form of conditioning. You take your place in front of a palace, you lift the heavy sword, your knuckles white. The wood feels rough and alien in your hand. You can feel the doctor's eyes on you, can feel the threat of the whip hanging in the air. You take a breath and swing. The impact shudders up your arm, a painful vibration that rattles your teeth. And so it begins. Your entire world shrinks to this single, unyielding target. Swing, block, step. Swing, block, step. Swing, block, step. Your muscles scream in protest. The sun, finally cresting the walls of the ludus, begins to beat down on the yard, turning it into a dusty, sweltering oven. The hours blur into a monotonous haze of pain and exhaustion. Historians still puzzle over the specifics of these training regimens. How specialized were they from the start? Ancient reliefs show gladiators using a wide variety of techniques. Did a man destined to be a ready Arius, the net fighter, spend his days practicing with a trident against a palace? It's likely. The level of specialization seen in the arena suggests a highly structured, undifferentiated training system, a subject of ongoing academic research based on fragmented artistic and literary evidence. You're just at the very beginning, learning the raw, universal basics of violence. The finesse will come later, if you survive that long. Today, you are just a blunt instrument, being hammered into shape. The day grinds on, a relentless cycle of exertion and correction. Your initial fear and adrenaline have long since evaporated, replaced by a deep, bone-wearing fatigue. Your arms feel like lead, and the heavy wooden Rudy seems to get heavier with every swing. Your body is screaming for rest, but there is none. The only break in the monotony is the sharp crack of the doctor's whip, a constant reminder that your pain is secondary to the demands of the training schedule. This is when you truly start to understand your new place in the world. You are not a student to be nurtured, you are a tool being sharpened, and the process is as unforgiving as grinding a blade on a stone. Around midday, the doctor calls a halt to the post-training. You're given a few minutes to gulp down some water from a communal barrel before being herded into a new formation. Now, you will practice with a partner. You are paired with another newcomer, the same young Celt who was struck for refusing his breakfast. There's a moment of hesitation as you face each other. There's no real animosity between you, just a shared sense of misery. But the doctor's instructions leave no room for camaraderie. He is your enemy, the trainer growls, gesturing between the two of you. His weakness is your opportunity. His mistake is your survival. Fight. The two of you begin to circle each other, clumsily mimicking the movements you've been practicing on the wooden posts. It's a pathetic, awkward dance. Your shields clatter together, and your heavy wooden swords meet with dull, unsatisfying thuds. It feels less like a fight and more like a desperate attempt to avoid the whip. Every missed block, every telegraphed swing, is met with a sharp sting of leather. The pain is a more effective teacher than any words could be. You learn to keep your shield up, not because it's a smart tactic, but because it hurts less than taking a blow to the ribs. You learn to watch your opponent's feet, not for strategic advantage, but to anticipate his move and avoid the subsequent punishment from the doctor. It's a brutal but brilliant system for breaking down your civilian instincts. Your natural aversion to violence is being systematically erased and replaced with a conditioned response. Strike, block, parry. Your mind empties. There is only the rhythm of the drill, the weight of the wood, the sting of the whip, and the grunt of the man in front of you. This is where the psychological transformation really begins, a process that has long fascinated historians and psychologists alike. How do you turn a farmer, a baker, or a prisoner of war into a performer willing to kill for the entertainment of others? Part of the answer lies in this relentless, dehumanizing repetition, which divorces the act of fighting from any emotional context, like anger or self-defense. It becomes a job. A grim, painful, mechanical job. During one exchange, your partner stumbles. For a split second, his shield drops, leaving his torso exposed. You hesitate. The instinct to not harm another person, drilled into you since childhood, holds you back. The doctor sees it. The whip cracks against your shoulders, a searing line of fire. He is not your friend. The trainer roars, his voice laced with fury. An opponent's mistake is a gift from the gods. You do not refuse a gift. Again, the message is hammered home not just with the whip, but with the cold logic of the arena. Hesitation is death. Compassion is suicide. The man you might share a bowl of porridge with in the evening is the same man you must be willing to cut down without a thought in the afternoon. This is a strange and twisted sort of brotherhood, and it's one of the great paradoxes of the ludus. These men lived, ate, and slept together. They would have formed bonds, friendships, and alliances. Yet, they were all living under the constant, unspoken threat that they could one day be pitted against each other. Archaeological evidence sometimes hints that this complex relationship. A famous mosaic from the Villa Borghese depicts a gladiator named Vital who fought 9 times, falling battle. Beside him is another figure, his victorious opponent. With the word Viciste you have conquered. Was the man who killed him a stranger, or the man from the next cell? We can never know. But the system was designed to foster this internal conflict, this blend of camaraderie and competition. You look at the Celt, his face is a mask of pain and exhaustion, the same as your own. This time, when he makes a mistake, you don't hesitate. You lunge forward, your wooden sword striking his chest with a heavy thud. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel powerful. It just feels necessary. The doctor grunts, a sound that might almost be approval. You have learned the lesson. You have taken one more small step away from the person you used to be, and one step closer to the killing machine the lawn estate is paying to create. The sun beats down, the whip cracks, and the grim work continues. As the afternoon sun begins its slow descent, casting long, distorted shadows across the training yard, the nature of the instruction shifts. The doctor who has been tormenting your group of newcomers steps back, his job of instilling the brutal basics apparently complete for the day. He is replaced by another man, someone who carries himself with an entirely different air. This is a doctor of a specific discipline, or a Dr. Th. Raycom for those destined for the Thracian style. HES here to teach theory as much as practice. He gathers your exhausted group and begins to lecture. His voice is calm, analytical, and utterly devoid of emotion. He speaks of angles, of leverage, of exploiting an opponent's blind spots. He uses a stick to draw diagrams in the dirt, illustrating how a specific parry can turn an enemy's momentum against them. It's a cold, brutal geometry. The arena is a conversation. He says, his eyes scanning your faces. Every move is a statement. Your job is to interrupt, to lie, and to deliver the final word. It's strangely intellectual. You are not just being taught to swing, or being taught the science of killing efficiently. He calls two of the more advanced gladiators to the center of the yard to demonstrate. They are not newcomers. They move with a fluid, deadly grace that makes your earlier fumbling seem like a child's game. One is a Seikutter the Chaser, heavily armed with a large shield and a gladius. His opponent is a Ruddy Arias the Netman, armed only with a trident, a dagger, and a weighted net. It's a classic matchup of speed versus power, agility versus defense. The crowd-pleasing spectacle is built on these contrasting styles, a deliberate pairing of opposites that historians see as a key element of the game's appeal. It wasn't just a brawl, it was a tactical puzzle for the audience to watch unfold. The demonstration begins. It's not a full-speed fight, but a controlled, step-by-step display. The ready Arias dances around the heavily armored Seikut or feinting with his trident, looking for an opening to cast his net. The Seikutter stays low, his shield held tight, moving methodically to cut off the netman's angles. The doctor provides a running commentary. See how the Seikut or keeps his head down, he explains. His helmet offers protection, but its small islets create a massive blind spot. The ready Arias knows this. He is trying to get behind him. It's like watching a chess master explain a grand strategy, except the pawns are living men and the checkmate is a trident to the throat. The doctor points out the psychological tactics at play. The ready Arias isn't just trying to trap the Seikut or HES trying to frustrate him, to make him angry. An angry fighter makes mistakes. He will overcome to a charge, leaving himself exposed. Patience, the doctor says, tapping his own temple. The most important weapon is not in your hand. It is in here. Let your opponent empty his spirit while you conserve yours. This psychological dimension is fascinating. Gladiators were not mindless brutes. The best of them were cunning strategists, experts in reading their opponents and manipulating their emotions under the most extreme pressure imaginable. Then you witness the brutal reality of the wit's purpose. During a complex maneuver, the ready Arias makes a small error, leaving his leg exposed for a fraction of a second too long. In a blur of motion, the doctor's whip snakes out and cracks against the offending limb. The veteran fighter barely flinches, but he instantly corrects his stance. The whip is not just for punishing newcomers. It is an instrument of precision, a tool for perfecting the technique of even the most experienced fighters. It's a constant, painful reminder that perfection is the only acceptable standard. There is no room for good enough when your life is on the line. It's this culture of relentless, painful perfectionism that distinguishes the ludus from any other form of training. One of the most peculiar and debated aspects of gladiator training involves their supposed oaths. The writer Petronius famously recorded the Octoramentum, the oath sworn by volunteer gladiators, which included the line, "I will endure to be burned, to be bound, to be beaten, and to be killed by the sword." Did slave gladiators take a similar oath? It's unlikely. They were given the choice, but they were certainly forced to live by its terms. Scholars still argue whether this oath was a literal contract or a piece of literary flourish, a way to emphasize the total surrender of self. that this life demanded. Looking at the scene in the training yard, the literal interpretation seems horrificously plausible. These men, whether by choice or by force, had handed over the complete ownership of their bodies and their fates. The demonstration concludes. The doctor dismisses the two veterans and turns his cold gaze back to your group of newcomers. You have seen, he says. Now you understand. The sand is not a place for anger or for bravery. It is a place for technique. Technique is what will keep you alive. Nothing else. His words hang in the dusty air. You look at your own clumsy wooden sword, then at the fluid grace of the veterans who just fought. The distance between what you are and what you need to become seems impossibly vast. You are exhausted, bruised, and demoralized, but for the first time today, you have a glimpse of the cold, hard science behind the spectacle. It's not just about enduring pain. It's about mastering it, weaponizing it, and inflicting it with flawless, dispassionate skill. As the formal training for the day finally winds down, a new kind of social dynamic begins to emerge. The guards herd everyone towards the armory to return the heavy wooden training gear. There's a hierarchy here too. The veterans, the men who have survived multiple bouts in the arena, go first. They hand over their equipment with a practiced air of indifference and are gone, disappearing into the deeper recesses of the barracks. They have earned certain privileges, small comforts that separate them from the common herd. Your group of newcomers, the Tier 1s, are last. You wait, nursing your bruised hands, undaking muscles, watching the intricate social ladder of this grim institution play out before your eyes. You finally get to the front of the line and hand your heavy sword and shield to a slave who works in the armory. He inspects them for cracks or damage, his eyes lingering on you for a moment with a look that is impossible to read. Is it pity, contempt, or just the flat gaze of someone who has seen hundreds of men like you come and go? You are at the absolute bottom of the food chain. You are fresh meat, an unknown quantity, and therefore you are worthless until proven otherwise. This pecking order is one of the most powerful, unwritten laws of the ludus. It governs everything from who gets the best portion of the evening meal, if best can even be applied to barley mash, to who gets a sleeping spot further from the cold, damp wall. You see it clearly as you enter the common room for the evening meal. The veterans are already seated on benches, clustered in small groups. They have their own territories. There's the table of the Primi Pali, the first sword gladiators, the top-ranked men of the school. They talk in low voices, and no one dares to approach them uninvited. Other groups are formed along fighting styles. The heavily armored secutaries keep to themselves, as do the nimble Thr Aces. It's a series of cliques, small islands of shared identity in a sea of misery. Newcomers like you are expected to find an empty space on the fringes, to remain silent, and to observe. You are not yet part of any tribe. You sit down with a few other Tier 1s, and the silence between you is thick with exhaustion and unspoken fear. One of the men, a former legionary disgraced for desertion, starts to quietly complain about the brutality of the training. In the army, they train you to stay alive, he mutters, rubbing his bruised shoulder. Here, they train you to die well. He's cut off by a sharp voice from a nearby table. Quiet fool. A veteran with a scarred face snarls without even looking at him. The walls have ears. And your whining insults the men who have already bled on the sand. The legionary falls silent immediately, his face flushing with shame. The lesson is clear: complaining is a luxury you have not earned. Showing weakness is an invitation for contempt. This internal hierarchy was a crucial tool for the Laniste to maintain control. By allowing for privileges and a ladder to climb, he created a system where the gladiators would police themselves. The veterans, protective of their hard-won status, had a vested interest in keeping the newcomers in line. It fostered a culture of brutal self-reliance and discouraged any organized dissent. A unified rebellion was far less likely when everyone was busy fighting for their own small scrap of advantage within the system. Historians debate how formalized this hierarchy was. Was a primus palace given official authority by the lawnus Dei, or was his stat thus purely informal? Earned through respect and fear, the evidence is sparse, but the existence of these ranks is undeniable, mentioned in graffiti and on funerary monuments. It was a microcosm of Roman society itself, a rigid class structure compressed into the four walls of a single barracks. A particularly strange and little-known aspect of this social order involved the concept of infamiae. In Roman law, gladiators, alongside actors and other entertainers, were officially branded with infamiae. This was a legal status of disgrace. It meant you lost most of your civil rights. You couldn't vote, hold public office, or even represent yourself in a court of law. So, a superstar gladiator could be adored by tens of thousands of fans, his image gracing mosaics and pottery, and yet, in the eyes of the law, he was an unknown person, a social outcast. This paradox defined their existence. They were simultaneously celebrities and untouchables. This legal status reinforced their separation from normal society and bound them even more tightly to the self-contained world of the ludus. You were famous inside these walls, or on the sand, but a pariah everywhere else. This knowledge hangs in the air, an unspoken truth that isolates every man in the room, and you are all utterly alone. You take your bowl of the same thick, tasteless porridge you had for breakfast. It's even less appealing now, your stomach churning from the day's brutal exertion. But you eat it. You eat every last spoonful because you saw what happened to the man who refused his meal this morning. As you sit down, you listen to the low murmur of conversations around you, trying to piece together the rules of this place. The veterans aren't talking about their families or their past lives. They dissect fights, critique techniques, and analyze opponents. It's the talk of professionals discussing their craft, but the craft is death. A veteran at the next bench is regaling his companions with a story, and the fool lunged, left his whole side open. A gift, he scoffs, shaking his head. I didn't even have to move my feet. HCS not boasting about his bravery or his strength. He's boasting about his technical superiority, his ability to exploit an opponent's stupidity. This is the currency of respect here, not raw courage, but cold, calculated efficiency. It reinforces what the doctor said in the yard technique is what keeps you alive. You look down at your own body. You weaker than you did this morning, not stronger. But the food you're eating, the infamous gladiatum sag, Dene is working on you in ways you can't yet perceive. You are part of a long, strange history of sports nutrition, a bizarre experiment in bioengineering a specific type of human body. This fattening up process wasn't just a haphazard guess, it was a refined system. The Laniste was just an owner, he was a human rancher. He knew that a gladiator who died too quickly was a bad investment and, more importantly, a boring show. The goal was to create fights that were long, bloody, and full of dramatic, non-lethal injuries before the final blow. The coup de grace. This dietary strategy is one of the most fascinating discoveries of bioarchaeology. When scientists at the Medical University of Vienna analyzed the skeletal remains from the gladiator cemetery in Ephesus, they used spectroscopy to examine the elemental composition of the bones. They found that the gladiators' bones had significantly higher ratios of strontium to calcium compared to the average Roman citizen of the time. Strontium is absorbed from the soil into plants, so a diet high in vegetables and grains, and low in meat and dairy, results in higher strontium levels in the bone. Their diet was almost exclusively vegetarian. This wasn't the diet of poverty, it was a deliberate, calculated regimen. They were getting all the protein they needed from the barley and beans, but they were also packing on the pounds and the fat that would make for a better spectacle. This diet also helps explain one of the weirder historical insults thrown at gladiators. They were sometimes called hordery or barley eaters. In the context of Roman society, which prized wheat bread, calling someone a barley eater was a subtle dig. It implied they were low class, more like livestock than men, subsisting on the same cheap grain fed to animals. It was another way of reinforcing their status as outsiders. Even while their profession was a cornerstone of public entertainment, you are eating the food that makes you a better, more resilient performer. But it's also the very food that marks you as socially inferior. It's another one of the cruel paradoxes of your new life. Scholars are still debating the nuances of this diet. Was it uniform across all gladiator schools throughout the empire, or did different regions have their own local variations? Did Honeste in Britain feed his men the same mash as one in North Africa? The evidence from Ephesus is a remarkable snapshot, but it's just one location. It's likely that the core principles, high carb, plant-based, remained the same, but the specific ingredients would have varied based on local agriculture. It was a practical science, not a dogmatic one. The goal was always the same: build a durable, entertaining product at the lowest possible cost. You finish your meal. Your body feels heavy, your mind dull. The day has been a relentless assault on your spirit and your physical being. You have been stripped of your name, broken down by brutal training, and are now being rebuilt from the inside out with this strange, functional food. You are being transformed, molecule by molecule, into something you don't even recognize. You are becoming a gladiator. And as you look around the grim dining hall at the scarred faces and the weary eyes of the other men, you realize you are not just eating dinner. You are consuming your own commodification. You are ingesting the very substance of your new identity as a performer, a piece of property, a barley eater. After the evening meal, there's a brief period before you are locked back in your cells for the night. This isn't free time, it's just another phase of the controlled schedule. Your group of newcomers is summoned again, this time by the head doctor, a man with an air of authority that even the other trainers defer to. He stands before you, his arms crossed, his face an unreadable mask. He has spent the day observing you, watching how you move, how you react to pain, how you handle the heavy training weapons. Now, it is time for judgment. He is here to assign you your future. He walks down the line of weary bodies, pausing in front of each man. He doesn't consult a tablet or a list. His decision is based on his experienced eye, his deep understanding of the cruel physics of the arena. He is a casting director for a play where the final act is real. He stops in front of a massive, muscular German. "You," he says, his voice flat. "You are slow, but you have power." He is assigning the man to one of the most iconic gladiator types, the heavily armed fighter. Equipped with a large shield, scudam, and a short-sword, Gladius, his head encased in a large fight helmet. He will be the tank, the powerhouse, the slow-moving but deadly core of many matchups. He moves to the next man, the nimble Celt who was punished this morning. The doctor circles him, his eyes taking in the man's live frame and quick reflexes. You are fast, but you have no weight. Armor will only slow you down. You will be a THRAX. The Celt is now destined to fight in the Thracian style, with a small, square shield and a short, curved sword designed to strike around an opponent's defenses. He will rely on speed and agility to survive. A stark contrast to the MUR Milo-S brute force force. This careful pairing of gladiators was essential to the game's success. The Honeste washed just selling violence, he was selling narrative. A fight between two identical gladiators was boring. A fight between a heavily armed powerhouse and a quick, nimble opponent was a story. This typecasting is evident in countless mosaics and reliefs, which almost always depict these classic, contrasting matchups. The doctor continues down the line, assigning fates. A tall, lanky man is designated to be a ready Arias, the net fighter, a role that required incredible agility and a certain theatrical flair. Another is chosen to be a hoplo Makos, a variation of a Greek hoplite soldier. Each decision is swift and final. There is no appeal. Your body type, your natural aptitudes, and the needs of the Honeste's current roster have determined your career path. This moment is critical. All your training will be specialized. You will no longer just be learning to fight, you will be learning to fight as a MUR Milo or a THRAX, or whatever role you have been assigned. You will live and breathe that single identity. Then, the doctor stands in front of you. He looks you up and down, as if solving a puzzle. He saw your hesitation in the yard earlier, the flicker of compassion that earned you the whip. But he also saw your correction, the grim necessity with which you finally struck your partner. He sees your build, your reach, your stance. You, he says, his voice cutting through the tense silence. He assigns you your type. Perhaps you are also to be a MU or a Mililo, your solid frame deemed perfect for absorbing punishment. Or maybe he sees a flicker of speed and designs you to be a Seikat or the Chaser, whose sole purpose is to hunt down and destroy the agile ready Arias whatever he decides. It is now your identity. The generic title of newcomer falls away, replaced by a specific, deadly profession. The existence of these highly specialized fighting styles has led to one of the most enduring debates among historians. Were these styles based on actual Roman military tactics, or the fighting styles of their conquered enemies? ATHRAX fights like a Thracian warrior, a Samnit like a Samnit soldier. Was this a form of historical reenactment, a way for Rome to symbolically reconquer its enemies in the arena for public entertainment, or were these just cool, exotic brands created by Savillani State to make the games more marketable? The truth is likely a mix of both. It was a powerful form of propaganda, reminding the populace of Roman dominance, while also providing the kind of varied, character-driven spectacle that kept people coming back for more. A lesser-known and much stranger gladiator type was the scissor. This fighter was armed with a short sword and debus, a weapon on his other arm, a hollow steel tip that encased his entire forearm, ending in a crescent-shaped blade. It was a purely offensive weapon, designed for disembodying an opponent in a close-quarters brawl. Another was the Asturias, who fought from a war chariot, a style supposedly inspired by the British Celts. The sheer variety is staggering and speaks to a constant need for innovation, for new and exciting ways to present combat to a public that could easily grow jaded. You have just been slotted into this complex and violent ecosystem. Your general education is over. Your specialized training is about to begin. You now have a title, a purpose, and a very specific set of skills you must master if you want to see another sunrise. Your new designation comes with new equipment. Now that you have been assigned a specific fighting style, you are taken back to the armory. This time, you are not just returning the generic wooden reining gear. You are being issued the tools of your specific trade, or at least the practice versions of them. The armory is a dark, intimidating place, smelling of oil, leather, and old sweat. Weapons and armor line the walls, organized by type. It's a library of lethal implements. A grizzled slave with missing fingers moves with a silent efficiency, pulling down the pieces that now define your existence. Let's say you were designated to be a MU or Milo. The armorer hands you your new gear, and the weight is immense. First comes the helmet. It's not real bronze, but a heavy, leather andiron training equivalent. It's shaped like a fish with a high, distinctive crest, and it covers your entire head, leaving only 2 small circular holes for your eyes. The moment you put it on, your world changes. Your vision is drastically reduced to 2 small circles of light, dominated by the sound of your own breathing, amplified and distorted inside the metal shell. It's instantly disorienting and claustrophobic. You feel less like a warrior and more like a man trapped in a metal bucket. This is something you will have to overcome. The helmet is your greatest protection and your greatest weakness. Next comes the armor. A single greave, a okri, is strapped to your left leg, the one you lead with. A thick, padded arm guard, a manica, is fitted to your right arm. And finally, you are given the iconic shield of your class. The scud emits a massive, rectangular, curved shield, a smaller version of the one used by Roman legionaries. It's heavy, awkward, and feels more like a piece of furniture than a piece of armor. To use its weight to your advantage rather than letting it encumber you will be a core part of your new training. You feel less like a fighter and more like a walking tortoise, encased in a clumsy, mismatched shell of leather and metal. This is a critical part of the process acclimatization. You will spend hours, days, just walking around in this gear, getting used to the weight, the restricted vision, the way it changes your balance. You will perform mundane tasks while wearing it, all to make it feel like a second skin. The first time you try to execute a simple training drill in full gear, it's a disaster. You stumble, your movements are slow and telegraphed, and the helmet makes you feel blind and deaf. The doctor is there, his whip a constant, painful critic, forcing you to adapt, to learn to see without seeing, to anticipate movements you can only partially hear. The very design of this armor is a subject of historical debate. Why the mismatched pieces protect one leg, but not the other? Why one arm and not both? The answer lies in the highly ritualized, almost sport-like nature of gladiatorial combat. It wasn't an all-out brawl, it was a duel with specific rules and conventions. The armor was designed to protect certain parts of the body, leaving others deliberately exposed. This ensured that fights would last longer and would require more skill to land a decisive blow. It was a calculated balance between safety and spectacle. It protected the fighter just enough to prolong the fight, but left enough vulnerability to keep the crowd on the edge of their seats. A fully armored man who was impossible to injure would be boring. A completely unarmored man might die too quickly. The specific combination of armor you wear is the result of centuries of trial and error, a perfect formula for creating bloody, dramatic, and profitable entertainment. One of the more peculiar and less understood pieces of equipment is the subligaculum. This was essentially a loincloth or a pair of shorts worn by all gladiators. Mosaics show them in various colors and styles, but sometimes they were worn over a belt that also supported a strange, apron-like groin guard. Was this for protection, or for modesty, given that so many other vital areas were left exposed? Scholars debate its true purpose. It might have simply been a convention, a part of the uniform that identified them as gladiators. It's a small detail, but it highlights how much of their appearance was about fulfilling an image, playing a role for the audience. As you stand there, weighed down by your clumsy new shell, you feel utterly ridiculous. You catch your reflection in a piece of polished metal. The person staring back is a stranger, a grotesque caricature of a warrior, but this is who you are now. Your days of generic training are over. From this moment forward, you will train as a Milo. You will eat, sleep, and breathe this identity. You will learn how the curve of your shield can deflect a blow, how to use your heavy helmet for a headbutt, how to fight from a low crouch like a coiled spring. Your body, once your own, is now just the engine for this collection of metal and leather. You are no longer just a man. You are a weapon system, and tomorrow your real training begins. Your first real injury happens sooner than you expect. It's not a glorious wound from a hard-fought duel, but a stupid, clumsy accident. During a drill, you trip over your own feet, your ankle twisting unnaturally under the immense weight of your training gear. A sharp, searing pain shoots up your leg, and you collapse onto the dusty ground of the yard, clutching your ankle and groaning. The doctoress whip, for once, stays silent. An injury like this, a sprain, a torn muscle, a broken bone, is not a mistake to be punished. It is an interruption of business. It is a depreciation of the lawless TS asset. Immediately, to men who are not guards or trainers rush into the yard. They are the Medici, the school's doctors. They are highly skilled professionals, and their role in the ludus is absolutely critical. They don't see you as a patient to be comforted, they see you as a valuable piece of machinery that has just broken down. Their job is to get you back on the production line as quickly and efficiently as possible. They examine your ankle with practiced, impersonal hands, their fingers probing for the extent of the damage. Their touch is firm, professional, and entirely without sympathy. You are carried out of the training yard and into another part of the ludus you haven't seen before, the infirmary. It's surprisingly clean and well organized, stocked with bandages, salves, and an intimidating array of bronze and iron surgical tools. This is where the lawn estate's investment in his property is most evident. A top-tier gladiator school would employ some of the best doctors in the Roman world. In fact, the famous physician Galen, one of the most influential medical researchers in history, began his career as a doctor in a gladiator school in his native Pergamon. The experience gave him an unparalleled, first-hand knowledge of anatomy, wounds, and surgery that he could never have obtained by just dissecting animals. He wrote about treating complex fractures, dislocated joints, and gaping sword wounds. A dark and twisted way, a cutting-edge laboratory for trauma medicine. The medicus sets to work on your ankle. He binds it tightly, his movements quick and precise. He might apply a poultice made of herbs to reduce the swelling. His knowledge is a practical, hands-on science. These doctors were masters of wound care. They knew how to clean a wound to prevent infection, how to stitch a gaping cut, and how to set a broken bone so it would heal straight and strong. A gladiator with a limp was useless in the arena, so their orthopedic skills had to be second to none. In essence, the original sports medicine physicians. As you lie there, you notice other gladiators in the infirmary. One has a deep, stitched gash on his arm. Another is having a dislocated shoulder brutally forced back into its socket, his grunts of pain muffled by a piece of leather he's biting down on. This is the hidden, unglamorous side of the profession. For every minute of glory in the arena, there are hundreds of hours of painful, mundane recovery. These men are constantly injured, living in a perpetual state of healing from the last training session while preparing for the next. The infirmary is as much a part of their daily routine as the training yard or the dining hall. This high level of medical care has led to an interesting academic debate. Some scholars argue that gladiators, despite their violent profession, may have had a longer life expectancy and better overall health than the average Roman citizen of the poor and working classes. The urban poor lived in squalid, unsanitary conditions and had little to no access to professional medical care. A simple infection could be a death sentence. You, on the other hand, are a valuable commodity. You are given a high-calorie diet, constant medical supervision, and access to elite surgical care. It's a grim cost-benefit analysis. You might die a violent death on the sand, but you're far less likely to die from a preventable disease or a poorly treated injury. Is a short, violent life with excellent health care better than a longer life of squalor and neglect? It's a question that has no easy answer. A particularly strange medical practice known from ancient texts was the use of gladiators' blood. It was believed by some to be a cure for epilepsy. The Roman author Pliny the Elder wrote with disgust about how spectators with epilepsy would rush into the arena to drink the warm blood of a freshly killed gladiator, a gruesome and desperate folk remedy. This places the gladiator's body in an even stranger context. In life, your sweat could be a beauty product. In death, your blood could be medicine. Every part of you was a potential resource to be consumed by the Roman public. The medicus finishes his work on your ankle. He gives you a stern look and a simple instruction: stay off it. You will be excused from training for a few days. But this is not a vacation. You will be expected to perform mother duties, mending equipment, cleaning the barracks, whatever you can do while sitting down. An idle gladiator is a waste of resources. As you are helped out of the infirmary, you have a newfound appreciation for the complex machine that is the ludus. It is not just a place of violence. It is a place of science and of a strange, pragmatic form of care. They will hurt you, they will also heal you, all to ensure you are in peak condition when the time comes for you to perform. Your time on the sidelines, nursing your injured ankle, gives you a different perspective on the ludus, with your days no longer consumed by the haze of exhaustion from training. You become a more observant witness to the inner workings of the school. You see the constant flow of deliveries, wagons of grain for the kitchen, new shipments of wood for the weapon makers, bundles of leather for the armorers. The ludus is a self-contained, bustling enterprise, a factory with a single, grisly product, and at the center of this web, the spider in the middle, is the lulling. You see him for the first time not as a distant, intimidating figure, but as a businessman conducting his affairs. He is a man named Marcellus. Let's say, he doesn't look like a brute or a warrior. He is dressed in the fine wool tunic of a successful Roman entrepreneur. He spends his days in a small office overlooking the main training yard, meeting with a steady stream of visitors. He is not a popular figure in Roman society. Lulling were seen as merchants of death, profiting from the blood of others, like gladiators. They were also branded with infamy, placing them in the same socially despised category as pimps and undertakers. They were a necessary evil, providing the games that the Roman public craved, but they were never truly accepted into polite society. One day, while mending a leather strap near his office, you overhear a conversation. The well-dressed man, clearly an event organizer or a magistrate's aide, is negotiating with Marcellus for the rental of his gladiators for the upcoming games. They are not talking about warriors or athletes. They are haggling over prices, like two merchants discussing a shipment of pottery. The ready Arius is my best, Marcellus says, his voice smooth and persuasive. He's a crowd pleaser. For him, the price is firm. The organizer scoffs. He's good, I'll grant you, but he's not a champion yet. I can get 3 novice DH or aces for that price. Marcellus sighs theatrically. 3 novices who will likely die in the first minute. My ready Arius guarantees a long, exciting match. He's an investment in quality entertainment. They go back and forth, discussing matchups, negotiating kill bonuses, and arguing over the cost of insuring the more valuable fighters. You are just a name on a list, a commodity with a price tag that fluctuates based on your performance, your fighting style, and your public appeal. This conversation reveals the core business model of the ludus. The lulling made his money primarily by renting his gladiators out to the editor, the sponsor of the games. If a gladiator survived the match, he was returned to the ludus to fight another day, and the lulling pocketed the rental fee. If the gladiator was killed, the editor had to pay the lulling his full replacement value, which could be an astronomical sum. This created a fascinating and complex incentive structure. On one hand, the lulling wanted his men to be good enough to win and become famous, which increased their rental value. On the other hand, he didn't want them to die. As a living, revenue-generating champion was far more valuable than a one-time insurance payout. This is why so many fights were not fought to the death. The final decision often rested with the editor, who would read the mood of the crowd. If the fight was good and the loser fought bravely, the crowd might signal for mercy with a gesture that historians are still debating. The traditional thumbs down for death and thumbs up for life is a 19th century invention, popularized by a painting. In reality, the gesture for death may have been a thumb held up, symbolizing a drawn sword, while a closed fist with the thumb tucked inside might have signaled sword sheathed, or mercy. The exact nature of this pollice verso turned thumb is one of those frustratingly ambiguous details of history. You also learn about the different kinds of contracts. Some gladiators were rented outside mission meaning without release. This was a fight to the death guaranteed. It was the main event, the most expensive and bloodthirsty part of the show. For a lulling, this was a huge gamble. He would charge an exorbitant fee for a signed mission contract, because he was guaranteed to lose a valuable asset. This was reserved for the most hated criminals or for a truly spectacular finale. However, war fought come mission with release, meaning the loser had a chance to be spared. It was this chance, this sliver of hope, that kept most gladiators from simply giving up. Listening to Marcellus, you realize he is a master of this brutal calculus. He knows the market value of every man in his school. He knows which matchups will excite the crowd, which fighter is on a winning streak, and which one is starting to lose his edge. He is a stockbroker, and you are all his volatile, flesh and blood portfolio. Your life, your death, your pain, it all comes down to a number on his ledger. The conversation ends with a handshake. The deal is struck. A dozen men from your school, your brothers in arms, have just been booked for the next festival. Their fates, for now, are sealed. And Marcellus the Laniste leans back, a satisfied look on his face. For him, it was just another good day at the office. As your ankle slowly heals, you are assigned to the endless rotation of evening chores that keep the ludus functioning. The glamour of the arena, distant as it already was, now seems like a complete fantasy. Your reality is the grime and monotony of manual labor. After the other gladiators finish their evening meal and disperse, your work begins. You are not the only one. A handful of other men also nursing injuries or deemed not yet ready for intensive training. From the cleanup crew, the work is dirty, exhausting, and utterly devoid of glory. Your first task is often in the armory. Under the watchful eye of the grizzled armorer, you are taught how to maintain the tools of the trade. You spend hours cleaning the wooden reining swords, checking them for splinters and cracks that could cause them to break during a drill. You are given cloths and a mixture of oilants and to scour the rust from the training helmets and greaves. It's a slow, repetitive motion: scrub, wipe, inspect, scrub, wipe, inspect. The smell of the oil gets into your clothes and under your fingernails. It's a constant, greasy reminder of your station. You also have to mend the leather straps on the shields and armor. You're given a thick needle and a roll of waxed thread and use it for hours, stitching torn leather back together. Your fingers, clumsy at first, become calloused and adept at the work. You learn to recognize the different types of damage. A clean slice from a practiced sword is easy to repair. A frayed strap from constant strain is more difficult. You are, quite literally, helping to hold together the very equipment that is used to break you down every day. The irony is not lost on you. After the armory, there is the training yard itself. You rake the packed turf, smoothing it over for the next day's drills, filling in the divots and holes left by hours of combat. You gather the stray pieces of broken equipment, the detritus of the day's violence. On some nights, you are tasked with race-stuffing the practice dummies, crude human-shaped sacks filled with straw that are used for striking practice. They are often ripped and torn, and as you patch them up and stuff them full again, you can't help but see them as a crude effigy of yourself and the other men. You are all just bodies, designed to absorb punishment. This mundane labor was an essential, if unrecorded, part of a gladiator's life. While epic poems and grand mosaics capture the moments of high drama, they ignore the sheer, crushing boredom that must have filled so much of their time. Life in the ludus was not a constant, adrenaline-fueled battle. It was a routine, a schedule, a job, and like any job, it came with its share of thankless, menial tasks. Historians often have to reconstruct this side of their lives through inference and archaeology, the discovery of workshops, forges, and repair areas within the ruins of gladiatorial barracks, like the one at Kar-Newton in Austria, confirms that these were not just dormitories and arenas. They were industrial complexes dedicated to the maintenance of both fighters and their gear. There is a strange and controversial theory that some of this labor might have been a form of occupational therapy. Some scholars speculate that the repetitive, manual tasks could have been a way to keep the men focused and their minds occupied, a psychological tool to stave off the crushing anxiety and despair of their existence. By focusing on a simple, tangible task like mending a strap or oiling a helmet, a man could momentarily escape the terrifying uncertainty of his future. Was this a deliberate strategy by the Laniste or simply a practical way to get free labor out of their injured assets, like so much of the gladiatorial world? The answer is likely a bit of both. It was pragmatic and, perhaps accidentally, psychologically beneficial. One of the oddest cleaning tasks you might have been given was collecting the strigiles. These were the curved, metal tools used by athletes to scrape oil, sweat, and dirt off their bodies after exercise. For famous gladiators, this mixture was a valuable commodity. But for everyone else, it was just grime to be cleaned up. You would see the top fighters performing their post-training scrape down, and later, a slave would collect the residue. It was a bizarrely intimate and yet completely impersonal part of the daily routine. As you finish your chores, long after the rest of the school is silent, you are finally allowed to limp back to your cell. Your body aches, not from the familiar pain of combat training, but from the dull, grinding fatigue of hard labor. You have spent your evening not as a warrior, but as a janitor, a repairman, a stable hand for human livestock. It's another layer of dehumanization. It reminds you that even when you are not fighting, you are still serving the machine. Whether in training, eating, or cleaning, it is structured to maximize your value. To the honeste, there is no escape. You fall onto your straw pallet, the smell of oil and old leather clinging to you, and surrender to a dreamless, exhausted sleep. Your cell feels different at night. During the day, it's a holding pen, a brief stop between the various phases of your grueling schedule. But at night, locked in the profound darkness, it becomes your entire world. The only connection to the life outside is through your ears. And it's at night that you become acutely aware of the sounds of Rome. The ludus might be a self-contained prison, but it's situated within a teeming, noisy metropolis. Lying on your straw pallet, you begin to piece together a map of a world you can no longer access. You can hear the distant rumble of wagon wheels on stone-paved streets. The law, the Lex Julia Municipal, is actually forbade most wheeled traffic in the city of Rome during the first 10 hours of daylight to prevent gridlock. So, the night was the time for commerce, for the endless convoys of supply carts bringing food, wine, and goods into the hungry heart of the empire. The sounds you hear are the lifeblood of the city, a city that you are now completely cut off from. It's a low, constant murmur, the sound of a world that is moving on without you. Sometimes you can hear music, a faint, lilting melody from a flute or a lyre, drifting over the walls from a near-by tavern or a wealthy villa having a late-night party. You hear bursts of laughter, the sound of people enjoying themselves, free and unrestrained. These sounds are like ghosts. They remind you of a life of simple pleasures, of evenings spent with friends or family, a life that now feels like it belonged to someone else. The laughter is the cruelest sound of all. It highlights the profound silence and despair of your own situation. You are not alone in your cell. The ludus is a crowded place. In the darkness, you can hear the other men. You hear them shifting on their own straw pallets. You hear them cough, groan in their sleep, or whisper to themselves in languages you don't understand. These are the only truly private moments any of you have, and yet you are forced to share them. The man in the next cell might be a German muttering a prayer to a northern god, while the one across the way might be a Syrian dreaming of the deserts of his homeland. You are a collection of displaced souls, crammed together in the dark. This forced intimacy creates a strange bond. You may not know their names or their stories, but you know the sound of their breathing. You know who has nightmares. You know who has nightmares is the foundation of the fragile camaraderie that exists within the ludus. It's a bond forged not in glorious battle, but in the shared misery of the quiet, lonely hours. This is something that official histories and grand mosaics can never capture: the quiet, human sounds of 100 broken men trying to find a moment's peace in the dark. One of the great historical debates about the lives of the lower classes in Rome is just how dark and quiet their nights really were. While the wealthy had oil lamps to light their villas, the vast majority of the city's population lived in a darkness almost unimaginable to us today. The streets were unlit, making travel at night dangerous. The fire risk from cheap, unstable lamps meant that most people simply went to sleep when the sun went down. The ludus, with its strict, military-style routine, would have enforced this. The evening bell didn't just signal the end of tours, it signaled a mandatory lights out. So you lie in a profound, oppressive blackness, a darkness that was the norm for most of the ancient world. Sometimes the sounds from outside are not so pleasant. You hear the sharp, angry shouts of a drunken argument spilling out of a nearby tavern. You hear the city watch, the vigiles on their patrols, their heavy footsteps echoing on the stone as they try to maintain some semblance of order in the chaotic, nocturnal city. You hear the barking of stray dogs. These are the sounds of the city's underbelly, a reminder that even for the free, life outside these walls could be dangerous and uncertain, but their danger is one of choice and chance. Yours is scheduled and ordained. You close your eyes and try to block it all out, to find a quiet place in your own mind. But the sounds of the world you've lost are relentless. They are a constant torment, a reminder of everything you are being denied. The distant laughter, the rumble of the carts, the faint strains of music, they are the sounds of freedom. And they make the cold, hard reality of your stone cell all the more unbearable. You are in the heart of the most powerful city in the world, yet you have never been more isolated. You are a prisoner not just of the ludus, but of the sounds of a life that is no longer yours. The bond you form with the other men in the ludus is the most complicated relationship you will ever have. As your ankle heals and you rejoin the training drills, you fall back into the rhythm of shared struggle. You sweat alongside these men, you eat with them, and you sleep within earshot of them. You learn their habits, their strengths, and their weaknesses. You come to rely on them. During a partner drill, you learn to trust that the man opposite you will execute his move correctly, just as he trusts you. A mistake by either of you could earn both of you the sting of the whip. It's a partnership born of mutual self-preservation. You might even find something resembling friendship. You could be paired with one man for weeks on end, learning to anticipate his movements, to read the subtle shifts in his stance. In the brief moments of rest between drills, you might exchange a few words, a shared joke at the doctor's expense, a quiet complaint about the food. You see a man help another who has fallen, offering a hand to pull him back to his feet before the guards notice. These small acts of humanity are sparks of light in the overwhelming darkness of your existence. They are what keep you from losing yourself completely. You might find yourself sharing the story of your past life in a hushed whisper and listening to another's story in return. You learn that the big, silent Gaul was a farmer, and he misses the smell of the earth after a rain. You learn that the quick-witted Iberian was a fisherman who was sold into debt slavery. These stories are dangerous. They remind you that these walking weapon systems, these numbered assets, were once people. They had families, hopes, and lives, and the more you see the person, the harder it is to see the opponent. This is the central, cruel paradox of your life. The man you are bonding with today, the one who shares his water with you, the one you trust in a training drill, he could be the man you are ordered to kill next month. The l'honnêteté is not sentimental. Matchups in the arena are not personal. They are business decisions. They are based on what will create the most exciting spectacle for the crowd. And a fight between two gladiators from the same school, who know each other's styles inside and out, can be a masterclass in technique and strategy. It's a huge draw for the connoisseurs in the audience. You see it happen. To veterans who have been training partners for years, who often sat together at meals, are listed on the fight card for the next games. They are matched against each other. In the days leading up to the fight, a strange wall goes up between them. They no longer speak. They avoid eye contact. They are isolated from each other, both mentally and sometimes physically by the guards. They are now, officially, enemies. The entire ludus watches a tense, morbid curiosity hanging over everyone. You are all witnessing a friendship being systematically dismantled by the rules of your profession. This psychological torment is perhaps the most brutal aspect of your existence, and it's a subject of ongoing fascination for historians. How did these men cope with this constant, looming threat? Did they try to avoid forming bonds altogether, remaining aloof and isolated to protect themselves, or was the human need for connection too strong to resist, even knowing the potential cost? The surviving evidence is scant and indirect. Funerary inscriptions sometimes hint at these bonds. One famous inscription from Roman Hispania was dedicated by a gladiator to his dearest comrade in arms, a man he likely had to train with and perhaps even fight. These small tributes speak volumes about the complex relationships that must have existed. There is a fringe theory, not widely accepted but interesting to consider, that some matchups might have been predetermined or worked, much like modern professional wrestling. In this scenario, two gladiators would secretly agree on a winner beforehand, staging a dramatic but ultimately non-lethal fight to entertain the crowd and ensure both survived. This would require an incredible level of trust and skill, and it would be a huge risk. If the lawniste or the editor found out, the punishment would be severe. While most academics believe the fights were brutally real, the possibility of collusion in certain circumstances can't be entirely dismissed. It speaks to the lengths these men might have gone to in order to survive and protect each other, within a system designed to tear them apart. As you watch the two former friends prepare to face each other, you feel a cold knot of dread in your stomach. Every friendly gesture, every shared moment you've had with the men around you, suddenly feels tainted dangerous. You look at your old reigning partner, the man whose rhythms you know as well as your own. You see him not just as a person, but as a potential future opponent. The camaraderie that made this life barely tolerable is now a source of anxiety. The ludus has given you a strange, twisted form of family, and now it is reminding you that you may one day be forced to destroy it. The sun goes down, and the oppressive, mandatory silence of the ludus descends once more. But the darkness isn't just an absence of light, it's a world of its own, with its own rules and its own language. It's in the quiet hours, huddled in your cell, that the psychological landscape of the barracks truly reveals itself. This is the time for the things that cannot be said in the light of day, under the watchful eyes of the guards and trainers. This is the time for whispers, for superstitions, and for the quiet trade of hope and fear. You start to notice the rituals. The man in the cell next to you, a burly Dacian, mutters a string of words in his native tongue every night before he sleeps, a prayer to a god from the mountains he will never see again. Another man has a small, smooth stone that he holds in his hand, rubbing it with his thumb until the friction makes it warm. It's a piece of his homeland, a tangible link to a world that has been stolen from him. These are small, secret acts of spiritual survival in a life where you have no control over your own body or your own fate. These tiny rituals are the only thing you can truly own. The veterans are the primary source of this hidden lore. They are the keepers of the superstitions that govern the fragile luck of a gladiator. You learn these rules through hushed conversations, fragments of advice passed from one man to another like valuable contraband. Never let your weapon touch the ground before a fight. One might whisper, "It angers the gods of the arena with your right foot first. The left foot is an evil omen." These beliefs, born of desperation, provide a semblance of control in a world governed by chaos. If you follow the rules, maybe, just maybe, you can tip the scales of fate in your favor. These superstitions are a fascinating window into the psychology of extreme risk professions, and they have parallels throughout history, from ancient soldiers to modern athletes. Historians debate the origins of these specific gladiatorial beliefs. Were they inherited from Roman military traditions, or did they spring up organically within the unique, high-stakes environment of the ludus? Some may have been linked to specific gods. Gladiators were often associated with Hercules, the divine hero who endured immense labors, or with Nemesis, the goddess of fate and divine retribution, whose shrines were often found near amphitheaters. A prayer to Nemesis wasn't a plea for victory, but a plea for a just fate, an acceptance of whatever was to come. It was a way of making peace with the terrifying uncertainty of their lives. One of the most peculiar and debated superstitions revolved around the night before a fight. It was considered incredibly bad luck to dream of your own victory. To dream of being crowned with the victor's palm was an omen of your own death. This counterintuitive belief might have been a psychological coping mechanism. By fearing success in the dream world, a gladiator could perhaps manage his own anxiety and arrogance. It was a way of staying humble before the gods of the arena, of not tempting fate with overconfidence. In the darkness you also hear the stories. Not the sanitized, heroic tales told in the city, but the ghost stories of the ludus. The veterans speak in low tones of past gladiators whose spirits are said to still haunt the barracks. They talk of Flamme, the man whose name you saw carved into the wall of your cell. You learn his story in bits and pieces. He was a Syrian, a legend who fought over 30 times and was awarded the Rudis, the wooden sword of freedom, for separate times, but he refused it. He chose to remain a gladiator. Why, no one knows for sure. Was he addicted to the adrenaline of the fight, or was the world outside simply too terrifying for a man who had known nothing but the structured brutality of the ludus for so long? His ghost, they say, still walks the yard at night, testing the heft of a spectral sword. These stories serve a purpose. They are a way of building a collective history, an identity for the men who are otherwise stripped of their own. You are no longer just a random collection of slaves and criminals. You are part of a lineage, a brotherhood of the damned that stretches back through generations of fighters. By telling the story of Flamme, you are all, in a small way, part of his legend. You are all part of the tradition. You lie on your straw pallet, listening to the whispers in the silence. You are being educated in a secret curriculum, a body of knowledge that is invisible during the day. You are learning that survival here is not just about physical strength and technique. It's about navigating a complex web of psychological and spiritual rules. It's about finding small ways to assert your humanity in a system designed to crush it. The darkness is not empty. It is filled with the ghosts of the past and the anxieties of the future, a shared, secret world that only the men condemned to the sand can truly understand. Not all men in the ludus are equal. This becomes clearer to you every day. But nowhere is the gap more obvious than in the treatment of the superstars. Every school has one or two of them, the primi pali, the champions, the men whose names the crowds chant. They are the lawn estate's prized assets, his marquee attractions, and their lives are starkly different from yours. While you are just a number on a ledger, they are a brand. You see it in the small things first. At meal times, while you are served the standard gray porridge, a plate with a piece of roasted meat or some fruit might be quietly delivered to the champion's table. It's not a feast, but it's a clear and public symbol of their elevated status. Their cells are slightly larger, perhaps with a real, albeit thin, mattress instead of a straw pallet. They are often exempt from the mundane evening chores that you and the other low-ranked gladiators are forced to perform. Their time and energy are too valuable to be wasted on mending straps or raking sand. Their training is also different. While you are drilled in groups, endlessly repeating the same basic maneuvers under the lash of a generic doctor, the champions receive private instruction. The head doctor, or even the laniste himself, will work with them one-on-one, refining the subtle nuances of their technique, developing new moves to surprise their next opponent. Their training is a strategic consultation, yours is a production line. They are being cultivated as artists of violence, while you are being mass-produced as a foot soldier. The most striking difference is their relationship with the outside world. While you are completely sequestered, forbidden from any contact beyond the walls, the superstars are sometimes granted small, controlled liberties. You might see a wealthy patron, a fan, being escorted into the ludus to meet with a famous champion. The patron might bring gifts, a bottle of fine wine, a block of expensive cheese. It's a transaction. The patron gets the thrill of proximity to a dangerous celebrity, and the gladiator gets a brief taste of a life beyond the barracks walls. These encounters are always carefully supervised, of course. The laniste would never risk his prize asset being compromised. This celebrity status is one of the most fascinating contradictions of the Roman world. These men were legally and famed social outcasts, yet they were the pop stars of their day. Their images were everywhere. Archaeologists have found their names scrawled as graffiti on walls in Pompeii, much like modern fans would write the name of a favorite athlete. Cress, Sens, the net fighter, holds the hearts of all the girls. One piece of graffiti reads, Mosaic celebrated their victories. Pottery was decorated with their portraits. You could even buy small, action figure-like statuettes of famous gladiators, molded from clay or glass. This hero worship created a complex psychological environment within the ludus. On one hand, the success of a champion was good for the whole school. A famous ludus attracted better recruits and commanded higher fees. There was a sense of collective pride. On the other hand, it fostered intense jealousy and resentment. You are sweating and bleeding in the yard, eating slop, and sleeping on straw, while another man, who is subject to the same fundamental rules of slavery, is enjoying privileges you can only dream of. It's a powerful motivator. The hope of attaining that status, of becoming a household name, is a powerful lure that keeps men striving, fighting, and enduring the brutal reality of their daily lives. The question of how much wealth these superstar gladiators could actually accumulate is a topic of intense debate among historians. They were paid for their victories, but they were still slaves. Did their prize money go directly to them, or did the Lawnist take a massive cut? The consensus is that the Lawnist controlled the finances. A gladiator might be credited with his earnings, which he could then use to buy those small luxuries within the ludus. Within the ludus, a significant portion of his winnings would also go towards paying off his own purchase price and the cost of his upkeep, a debt that the Lawnist could inflate at will. True financial freedom was a carefully managed illusion. Even a champion was still just a gilded slave. One of the most extreme and bizarre examples of gladiator celebrity was the Emperor Commodus. In the late 2nd century AD, he became obsessed with the arena and declared himself a gladiator. He would fight in the Colosseum, often against terrified opponents who were under strict orders not to harm him, or against helpless, tethered animals. It was a massive scandal. For the ruling class, it was the ultimate degradation of his office. For you, a real gladiator, it would be a grotesque parody of your life and death struggle. Commodus was playing a game, basking in the adoration of the crowd without any of the real risk. He was a tourist in your world of pain. His story is the ultimate example of the strange, magnetic pull that the gladiator held over the Roman imagination, a pull strong enough to entice even an emperor to trade his palace for the blood-soaked sand. The atmosphere in the ludus changes palpably. A nervous energy, a low hum of anxiety and anticipation, replaces the usual monotonous grind. The fight card for the next Manus, the public games, has been finalized and posted. A simple wooden board is mounted on a wall in the main courtyard, and on it, written in stark black letters, is the list of names. Your name is on it. Seeing it there, in black and white, makes it real in a way that the abstract threat of the future never could. All the training, the pain, the fear, it was all leading to this single point. You stare at your name, then at the name written next to it, your opponent. Perhaps it's a man you know, a face you see every day across the dining hall. Or perhaps it's a name you don't recognize, a gladiator from another school, a complete unknown. It's hard to say which is worse. Fighting a man you know means facing a familiar nightmare. Fighting a stranger means stepping into the abyss of the unknown. The posting of the Libellus, the official program, sets in motion a new phase of your life. Your training intensifies, but it also becomes more focused, more strategic. The doctors are no longer just drilling you on generic techniques. They are preparing you specifically for your opponent. If your opponent is known to have a strong defense, your training will focus on finding ways to break it. If he is known for his speed, you will drill endlessly on how to cut off his angles and trap him. It becomes a deadly, physical chess match, planned out days in advance. The whole school is now oriented towards the upcoming games. The armorers are busy polishing the real weapons and armor, not the heavy training gear, but the lighter, finely crafted equipment reserved for the arena. The Medici are paying close attention to the listed fighters, ensuring they are in peak physical condition, treating even the smallest scrape or strain with utmost seriousness. You are now the school's prize racehorses, being prepped and polished before the big race. This public announcement of the fight card was a key part of the Roman spectacle. Copies of the libellus would be posted all over the city, working as a form of advertisement to build public excitement. They would list the names of the gladiators, their records, number of fights, number of wins, and sometimes even their fighting style. Amelius the TH or AX10 fights, H wins versus Valeries the MUR Milo newcomer. The public would see these matches and begin to choose their favorites, placing bets, and starting debates in the taverns and bathhouses. You are no longer just a slave in a barracks, you are a public figure, a topic of conversation, a name that people are wagering money on. The psychological pressure is immense. You see the other men whose names are on the list. Some become quiet and withdrawn, turning inward as they mentally prepare. Others become more aggressive, their fear manifesting as anger and bravado in the training yard. Fights break out over trivial matters. The doctoress and guards are quick to intervene. An injury to a listed fighter just days before the games would be a financial disaster for the Launistes. One of the most debated aspects of these final days is the diet. Did it change? Some ancient sources suggest that in the days immediately preceding a fight, the diet might have been enriched, perhaps with a bit more protein, to ensure maximum energy. This is a topic of much discussion among historians and archaeologists. While the long-term fattening diet is well established, this short-term performance diet is harder to prove. It makes logical sense from a sports science perspective, but the direct evidence remains elusive. It's one of those small, intimate details of a gladiator's life that may be lost to history. That night, sleep becomes difficult. Your mind races, playing out 100 different versions of the upcoming fight. You visualize your opponent's moves, you rehearse your own responses. You are haunted by the simple, brutal math of the arena. There are 2 of you on that list. But there is a very real chance that only one of you will walk out. You find yourself performing the small, secret rituals you've learned with a new sense of urgency. You hold your good luck charm tighter. You whisper your prayers with more fervor. You look at the other men on the list. You are all members of a very exclusive, very temporary club. You are the chosen. You share a bond that no one else in the ludus can understand. You are all walking towards the same roar, the same sand, the same terrifying moment of truth. The camaraderie and the rivalry, the friendship and the enmity, it all melts away, replaced by a single, unifying reality. You are all on the board. You will have to prove you deserve to have your name erased from it by victory, rather than by death. The night before the games is unlike any other. It is the night of the Encyclopedia, the free dinner or Last Supper. This was a traditional and very public part of the pre-game ritual. You and the other gladiators scheduled to fight are lead out of the confines of the ludus for the first time since you arrived. It's a jarring experience. The simple act of walking through a gate into the open city feels strange and disorienting. The air smells different, a complex mixture of street food, incense, and the press of unwashed bodies. You are not being set free. You are being put on display. The Encyclopedia is a public banquet held in your honor, but you are not the guest, you are the main attraction. You are taken to a public hall or a large tavern where tables have been laid out for you. The food is magnificent, a stark contrast to the bland mush you have been eating for months. There are platters of roasted meat, fish with savory sauces, fresh bread, ripe fruits, and most importantly, wine. It is a feast designed to be a final, luxurious indulgence before the possibility of death. But you are not allowed to enjoy it in peace. The hall is open to the public, and it is packed with spectators. They press in around your tables, a morbidly curious mob. They are the fans, the gamblers, the connoisseurs of violence. They stare at you while you eat, their eyes assessing you like a prized bull at a market. They point out their favorites. That's him. You hear a man whisper, pointing at a famous champion at your table. He's the one I bet on. Look at the size of his arms. They comment on your physique, your scars, your demeanor. It's deeply unsettling. You are an animal in a zoo, and this is your public feeding time. This strange event served multiple purposes. For the editor sponsoring the games, it was a fantastic piece of marketing, a way to whip up public excitement and give the fans an up-close look at the stars of the show. For the gamblers, it was a crucial opportunity to inspect the fighters before placing their final bets. Does he look confident? Is he eating well? Or does he seem nervous and off his food? It was an ancient form of a pre-game press conference and a weigh-in, all rolled into one bizarre public banquet. For you, the gladiator, the experience is profoundly alienating. You are surrounded by the sights and sounds of the normal life you've been denied, but you are not a part of it. You are the other, the object of fascination and fear. Some gladiators, the veterans and superstars, play to the crowd. They adopt a confident, swaggering persona, laughing loudly and drinking deeply, projecting an image of fearless bravado. They know that this performance is part of the job. It builds their legend and pleases their patrons. Others, like you, might react differently. The richness of the food might turn your stomach, which has become accustomed to a simple, bland diet. The noise and the press of the crowd might be overwhelming after the monastic quiet of the ludus. You might just focus on the food, trying to block everything else out, to find some small, private moment of pleasure in the midst of this public spectacle. Plutarch, the Greek historian, wrote about the Encyclopedia, noting the different ways gladiators handled it. He observed that many ate their fill quietly, thinking of their families and the homes they had left behind, showing no bravado at all. This ritual is a source of much debate for historians. Was it seen as an act of generosity by the editor, a final gift to the condemned, or was it a purely cynical marketing ploy? The answer, as is so often the case with Rome, is probably both. It was a calculated piece of showmanship that was wrapped in the language of tradition and honor. It provided a moment of luxury for the fighters while simultaneously serving the commercial and political interests of the game's sponsor. A particularly strange and dark interpretation of the Encyclopedia connects it back to the supposed origins of the games as a form of funeral rite. In this view, the banquet is a symbolic funeral feast, where the men who are about to die are honored before their final sacrifice. This would make the spectators not just fans, but participants in a quasi-religious ritual. While this interpretation is not universally accepted, it adds another layer of grim complexity to the evening. Are these people here to cheer for you, or to mourn you in advance? As the night wears on, the wine flows freely. For a man who hasn't had alcohol in months, the effect is potent and quick. The noise of the crowd begins to blur, the faces becoming a smudge of indistinct features. The fear and anxiety that have been gnawing at you might be temporarily dulled by the haze of intoxication, replaced by a reckless sense of fatalism. This, too, is part of the design. A slightly drunk, well-fed gladiator might be less inhibited, more aggressive, and therefore more entertaining in the arena the next day. The Encyclopedia is not a kindness. It is the final stage of your preparation. It is the last step in turning you from a man into a public spectacle. Amidst the noisy, drunken chaos of the Encyclopedia, you become aware of a particular kind of attention. It's not from the gamblers assessing your muscles or the common fans looking for a thrill. It comes from the small, exclusive groups of wealthy, upper-class Romans who have secured the best tables closest to the gladiators. And within those groups, the most intense, unnerving gazes often come from the women. The matrons, dressed in fine silks and adorned with gold jewelry, watch you with a look that is a complex and disturbing mixture of fascination, pity, and something else, something more primal. This is your introduction to the strange world of the Roman gladiator groupie. It's one of the most bizarre and well-documented social phenomena of the era. Despite the fact that gladiators were in fanes legally disgraced and socially on par with the lowest dregs of society, they held a powerful, almost magnetic allure for some members of the Roman elite, particularly women. This wasn't just a general admiration. It was a specific, often obsessive, form of celebrity worship that could border on the pathological. The Roman satirical poet Juvenal wrote with scathing contempt about this phenomenon. In his famous satires, he describes a fictional senator's wife named Epiae, who abandoned her husband, her family, and her country to run off to Egypt with her gladiator lover, a man he describes as aging, scarred, and far from handsome. Juvenal uses this story to mock the moral decay of the Roman aristocracy, but in doing so, he confirms that this was a recognizable social trope. The idea of a high-born lady throwing away her reputation for a dangerous, low-class brute was clearly something his audience would understand. What was the source of this attraction? Historians and psychologists have debated this for centuries. Part of it was likely a simple case of what modern society calls hybristophilia, or a romantic attraction to those who commit outrageous or violent acts. The gladiators were the ultimate bad boys of the Roman world. They were dangerous, forbidden, and lived completely outside the strict social conventions that governed the life of a respectable Roman matron. To be associated with one, even just as a fan, was a form of rebellion, a thrilling dip into a world of raw, untamed masculinity that was the polar opposite of their own sheltered, controlled existence. The attraction was also intensely physical. In a society where elite men were often politicians or administrators, the gladiator was a specimen of peak physical conditioning. His scars were not seen as deformities, but as symbols of survival and strength. The sweat scraped from his body, the street regilamante, was considered a potent aphrodisiac for a reason. It was believed to contain the very essence of his virility. This fetishization of the gladiator's body is a recurring theme. You are not just a person, you are a collection of powerful, desirable physical attributes. This admiration could sometimes manifest in direct, tangible ways. A wealthy female patron might sponsor a particular gladiator. This could involve sending him gifts, like the ones you saw the champions receive back at the ludus. It might also involve using her influence to ensure he gets favorable matchups or the best medical care. In the most extreme cases, it could lead to clandestine affairs. The logistics of such a thing would be incredibly difficult and risky for both parties. The laniste would guard his valuable assets closely, and a disgraced Roman wife faced social ruin and severe legal penalties. But the fact that writers like Juvenal complained about it so bitterly suggests that it did happen. One of the most enduring, though likely false, rumors from Roman history is that the mother of the Emperor Commodus, Faustina the Younger, had an affair with a gladiator. The story goes that she confessed this illicit passion to her husband, the Stoic philosopher Emperor Marcus Aurelius. On the advice of his soothsayers, he supposedly had the gladiator executed and forced Faustina to bathe in his blood before they next slept together. 9 months later, Commodus was born the emperor who would later disgrace himself by fighting as a gladiator. This tale is almost certainly a smear, a piece of political slander designed to explain Commodus's bizarre behavior by attributing it to a tainted conception. But the fact that this story was plausible to a Roman audience shows just how deeply ingrained the idea of the gladiator lover was in their cultural imagination. As you sit at the banquet, you feel the weight of these women's gazes. They are not looking at you, the person. They are looking at an idea, a fantasy. You are a symbol of a wild, dangerous world they can safely observe from a distance. To them, you are no more real than a character in a play. And you realize with a sinking feeling that even this admiration is just another form of dehumanization. You are an objective desire, but you are still an object. As the scenery bearer draws to a close and the guards begin to herd you and the other fighters back towards the ludus amand, you recognize as the lawn estate's chief administrator pulls you aside. He holds a wax tablet, the same kind he used to take inventory on your first morning. He speaks to you in a low, business-like tone, explaining the financial arrangements for tomorrow's fight. This is the first time anyone has spoken to you about money, and the reality is a cold, hard slap in the face. He tells you about the prize money, The premium if you win, you will be awarded a certain sum. It sounds like a lot of money, enough to make your head spin. For a moment, a flicker of hope ignites within you. Could this be your path to a better life? Could you earn your way out of this hell? But then the administrator starts to explain the deductions, and your hope dies as quickly as it was born. First, he explains, a huge portion of any prize money you win automatically goes to the lawn estate. This is his management fee, his return on the investment he has made in you. The percentage is non-negotiable. Then he starts listing the other costs that will be deducted from your share. The cost of your purchase at the slave market, the cost of your transportation to the ludus, the accumulated cost of every bowl of porridge you've eaten, every piece of training gear you've used, every bandage the medicus has wrapped around your injuries. He has a detailed, itemized list. The numbers add up with terrifying speed. You quickly realize that even if you win tomorrow, after all the deductions, you will be left with a pittance. And worse, you will still be deeply in debt to the lawn estate. You are trapped in a system of indentured servitude where the debt is almost impossible to repay. The promise of prize money is not a path to freedom, it's a psychological tool, a carefully managed incentive to make you fight harder. It creates the illusion of agency, the fantasy that you are working for yourself, when in reality you are just working to enrich your owner. This economic exploitation was the real engine of the gladiatorial system. While the public saw heroes and villains, the lawn estate saw balance sheets. The entire structure of the ludus was designed to be a profitable enterprise. This is a topic that has received a great deal of scholarly attention in recent years. By analyzing the prices mentioned in ancient texts and the business-like language found in some inscriptions, historians have pieced together a picture of a sophisticated and deeply exploitative business model. A key part of this model was the control of information. You, the gladiator, have no way of knowing if the costs the administrator is listing are real or inflated. You are a slave, and you must simply accept the numbers you are given. This is why even highly successful, famous gladiators often remain slaves for their entire careers. Their earnings were just figures on a ledger, a running tally in a game that was rigged against them from the start. They might have lived a more comfortable existence than a newcomer, but their fundamental status as property rarely changed. The administrator then explains the concept of the draw, or stands misses if a fight goes on for a long time with no clear winner and both combatants have fought bravely. The editor can declare it a draw. In this case, both gladiators are released from the arena alive. You might think this is a good outcome, but the administrator quickly disabuses you of that notion. In the case of a draw, he explains, there is no prize money. You get to keep your life, but you earn nothing. This created a powerful incentive to always press for a decisive victory, even if it meant taking greater risks. A safe, boring fight was financially worthless. One of the most debated questions among historians is whether a gladiator could truly buy his own freedom. We know that some gladiators were eventually awarded the rudis, the wooden sword that symbolized their release and retirement. But was this something they earned with their prize money, or was it a gift bestowed by a grateful estate or a powerful politician for years of profitable service? The consensus is leaning towards the latter. Freedom was likely a reward for a long and successful career, a golden handshake for a gladiator who was perhaps getting too old to fight, but was too popular to simply discard. The idea that a gladiator could just save up his winnings and purchase his own manumission is likely a romantic fantasy. The system was designed to prevent that very outcome. The administrator claps his tablet shut. The financial briefing is over. He gives you a thin, humorless smile. Fight well tomorrow, he says, and you will be rewarded. But you now understand the true meaning of his words. Your reward is just a slightly larger entry on the credit side of a ledger that is permanently stacked against you. You are not fighting for freedom. You are not fighting for freedom. You are fighting to make your owner's business more profitable, in the desperate hope that he might one day decide you are no longer a useful asset on the sand. Back in the suffocating silence of your cell, The administrator's words echo in your mind, extinguishing the last embers of hope for a future defined by wealth or freedom. There is only one symbol of hope left, one that is both profoundly meaningful and maddeningly remote. The Rudies. It's a simple object, a plain wooden sword, identical to the heavy training weapon you've spent countless hours swinging. But it represents the impossible dream. It is the symbol of freedom. The veterans talk about it in hushed, reverent tones. The Rudies is not something you can buy. It is something you must be awarded. When a gladiator has served with distinction for many years, has won numerous victories, and has become a true legend of the arena, the editor or the lawnist might, as a mark of supreme honor, present him with the Rudies in a public ceremony. The moment a gladiator accepts that wooden sword, his contract is void. He can walk out of the ludus and never return. You have seen a carving of it on a veteran's locker. Just a simple outline of a sword, scratched into the wood. It's a shrine to the only god that truly matters in this place, the god of enough. Enough fights, enough wins, enough survival. To receive the Rudies is the ultimate victory. A win not just over one opponent, but over the entire system that has enslaved you. It is the finish line, the final, definitive end to a life of constant peril. The stories of those who have received it are the most sacred lore in the ludus. They are told and retold, embellished with each telling, until they take on the quality of myth. You hear the story of a famous Seikut, or who was awarded the Rudies in the Colosseum itself, in front of the emperor, and the roar of the crowd was said to be louder than for any victory in combat. He laid down his real sword and shield, accepted the wooden one, and walked out of the arena, a free man, disappearing into the city and into legend. But the dream of the Rudies is complicated by a darker, more unsettling reality, encapsulated in the story you heard about Flamme, the Syrian champion who was offered the Rudies for times and refused it. This story haunts you. Why would anyone turn down freedom? The veterans have their theories, whispered in the dark. Some say he was a true warrior, addicted to the roar of the crowd and the thrill of the fight, and that a quiet life of freedom seemed more terrifying than a glorious death in the arena. Others have a more cynical take. They say that a famous gladiator, even a free one, was still marked by infamy. Where could he go? What could he do? He was trained for nothing but combat. Perhaps Flamme believed that the only place he truly belonged, the only place he had any status or purpose, was within the walls of the ludus. This is a profoundly disturbing thought. It suggests that the ludus doesn't just imprison your body, it colonizes your mind. It can reshape you so completely that you can no longer imagine a life outside of its brutal but simple rules. The freedom represented by the Rudies is the freedom to do what, to become what, a baker, a farmer. After years of being a living legend, a god of the arena, these mundane lives might seem like a different kind of death. This psychological dependency is one of the most debated and fascinating aspects of long-term gladiatorial life. Did some men become institutionalized, unable to function in the normal world? The case of Flamme, if true, suggests that this was a very real possibility. The awarding of the Rudies is also a subject of some historical controversy. Was it always a symbol of full freedom? Some scholars argue. A Rudi Arias might still be bound by certain obligations to his former lawnist. He might be required to serve as a doctor, a trainer for the next generation of fighters. This would be a kind of semi-retirement, a way for the lawnist to continue profiting from his expertise. So even in freedom, the shadow of the ludus could remain. The man would be free from the risk of death on the sand, but he would not be free from the world that had defined him. We have funerary inscriptions for Rudi who died of old age, proving that a long life after the arena was possible. But the details of those lives are mostly lost to us. A lesser-known, but equally symbolic object was the pilus, a type of conical felt cap that was traditionally given to manumitted slaves in Roman society. It is possible that when a gladiator was awarded the Rudies, he was also given a pilus to wear, a clear and legally recognized symbol to the entire world that he was no longer property. The image of a scarred, battle-hardened warrior wearing this simple, soft felt cap is a powerful one, a strange and poignant juxtaposition of his violent past and his newly peaceful future. Lying in your cell the night before your first fight, the Rudy seems like a distant star in a black sky. It's too far away to offer any real warmth, but it's there. It's a reminder that there is, for a very select few, a way out. It's a fragile, complicated dream, but it's a dream nonetheless. And in a place like this, a dream is a powerful weapon. It's the one thing the law-honest cannot control, the one thing that is truly yours. As you try to find some rest, your mind drifts to the bigger picture. You think about the roaring crowds that will fill the amphitheater tomorrow. Who are these people? Why are they so eager to watch you fight and possibly die? You begin to grapple with the strange, contradictory place you occupy in the Roman world. You are a slave, a criminal, a social outcast, but you are also a celebrity, an athlete, a performer at the very heart of Roman culture. This paradox is the essence of your existence. The Roman people's relationship with the games was complex and deeply ingrained. On the surface, it was mass entertainment, the ancient equivalent of into one. It was a thrilling spectacle, a way to escape the monotony and hardship of daily life. The appeal of the violence was primal and direct. It was a visceral, high-stakes drama where the outcome was never certain, but it was also much more than that. The games were a powerful political tool. For the emperors and the ruling class, the monera were a way to curry favor with the populace, to keep the potentially restless urban masses happy and distracted. The poet Juvenal famously coined the phrase peina et circenses to describe this strategy. By providing free food and spectacular, bloody entertainment, the state could pacify the people and prevent social unrest. The amphitheater was not just a venue for sport, it was a venue for political control. When you step onto the sand tomorrow, you are not just an entertainer, you are an unwitting participant in the maintenance of the Roman state. There was also a deep symbolic meaning to the violence you are expected to perform. The arena was a place where Roman values were put on dramatic display. When you fight, you are expected to show virtus, courage, discipline, and skill. You are expected to face death with a stoic indifference. Even in defeat, a gladiator who fought bravely and died well was seen as upholding a core Roman ideal. You are, in a strange way, a moral lesson. You are a demonstration of how a true Roman, even if you are not one by birth, should face mortality. You are a living, breathing embodiment of the empire's core virtues, performed for the education and edification of its citizens. This leads to the central, enduring debate among historians: were gladiators seen primarily as athletes or as victims? The evidence is maddeningly contradictory. On one hand, they were clearly treated as athletes. They had specialized trainers, specific diets, and advanced medical care. Their records were racked, and their fans followed their careers with the same passion as modern sports enthusiasts. Mosaics depict them in heroic poses, their names proudly displayed. They look like champions. On the other hand, they were slaves, living under a brutal, coercive system. Their lives were forfeit. They were bought and sold like cattle, and their sport was a life or death struggle for the amusement of others. Funerary inscriptions often speak of the tragedy of their lives. One famous epitaph reads, "To the spirit of the departed Flamme, the Secut, where he lived 30 years. Fought to a draw 9 times, was granted mercy for times." His companion, Delicatus, erected this for his deserving comrade in arms. It's a record of a stellar athletic career, but it's also a tombstone for a man who died at 30th. Athlete or victim? The answer seems to be that they were both, simultaneously. They were victims who were forced to perform as athletes. A lesser-known aspect of their status was their connection to the world of magic and curses. Because of their violent lives and often untimely deaths, gladiators were considered to have a powerful connection to the supernatural world. Their blood was used in folk remedies, and their names were invoked in curse tablets, or defix I once these worthy sheets of lead inscribed with a curse against an enemy, a rival in business, a lover's quarrel, which were then folded, pierced with a nail, and buried near a grave or a sacred site. The spirit of a prematurely dead person, like a gladiator, was thought to be a powerful agent for carrying out these curses. So you are not just an athlete and a victim, you are also a potential supernatural weapon, your spirit a commodity to be used even after your death. You lie in your cell on the eve of your first battle, and you are all of these things at once. You are a number on a ledger, a piece of property, a political tool, a moral example, a celebrated athlete, a despised outcast, a tragic victim, and a magical totem. The Roman world has projected all its fears, its values, and its desires onto you. You are a blank canvas onto which they have painted their own complex, contradictory image. When you step onto the sand, you carry the weight of all these expectations. Your job is not just to fight. It's to be everything the people of Rome need you to be. The morning of the games arrives not with a bang, but with a profound and unnerving stillness. The usual clanging bell that signals the start of the day does not ring. The guards do not shout. The routine that has governed every waking moment of your life in the ludus is suspended. You are simply awoken by a guard unlocking your cell or and leaving a simple breakfast better than the usual porridge, but you have little appetite for it. The silence is more terrifying than any noise. It is the silence of anticipation, the deep breath before the plunge. You and the other fighters on the day's card are separated from the rest of the gladiators. You are led to a different section of the barracks, a holding area where you will make your final preparations. The air is thick with tension. Men handle the anxiety in different ways. Some pace back and forth in their cells like caged animals. Others sit perfectly still, their eyes closed, in a state of deep meditation or prayer. Some engage in light, nervous banter, the jokes falling flat in the heavy atmosphere. There is no training today, no drills, no whips. The time for preparation is over. The armorers arrive, and this time they bring the real armor. It's not the heavy, ill-fitting training gear. This is the genuine article, polished to a brilliant shine. It feels lighter, more agile. It fits your body like it was made for you, because it was. The bronze of your helmet gleams in the lamplight. The leather of your manica is supple and strong. Wearing it, you feel a transformation. The clumsy, awkward novice is gone, replaced by something more dangerous, more real. You are putting on your worked uniform. As you are being strapped into your gear, you might catch a glimpse of the lawnist Marcellus. He walks among his fighters, offering a final word to each. To a nervous newcomer, he might offer a gruff word of encouragement. To a veteran champion, he might give a nod of shared confidence. When he comes to you, he looks you in the eye. "I have wagered a great deal of money on you today," he says, his voice low and serious. "Do not disappoint me. It's not meant to be inspiring. It's a stark reminder of your duty. You are his investment, and today is the day he expects to see a return." One of the most peculiar rituals that might take place in these final moments is the tasting of the sand. Some sources suggest that a gladiator might be given a small pinch of sand from the arena floor before he fights. It was a way of connecting him to the space, of preparing him for the ground where he might make his final stand. Whether this was a common practice or a rare, localized tradition is, like so much else, a subject of historical debate. But it speaks to the deep, almost spiritual connection these men had with the arena, the place that was both their stage and their potential grave. The sounds from outside begin to filter in. At first, it's a low murmur, the sound of thousands of people gathering, but as the morning progresses, the murmur grows into a steady roar, a wave of sound that seems to make the stone walls of the ludus vibrate. The amphitheater is filling up. 80,000 people, maybe more, all waiting for the show to begin. They are waiting for the show to begin. They are waiting for you. The sound is inhuman, a vast, elemental force. It's the sound of the beast you are about to be fed to. The munus was an all-day affair. The morning was typically reserved for the Venetianess, the wild beast hunts, where exotic animals from all corners of the empire were slain. The midday period was often reserved for the nox, i.e. the public execution of criminals, who were thrown to the beasts or forced to fight each other with no armor or training. This was the grim appetizer. You and the other professional gladiators are the main event. The headline act, reserved for the afternoon when the crowd's appetite for blood has been thoroughly whetted. The time comes. A guard bangs his fist on your cell door. It's the signal. You take a deep breath, the air inside your helmet tasting stale and metallic. You join the other gladiators, lining up in a narrow, dark tunnel that leads from the ludus directly into the heart of the amphitheater. The tunnel is called the Portal Ibidinensis, the gate of the goddess of death and funerals, a grim name for the path to work. You stand in the cool darkness, listening to the deafening roar of the crowd just a few dozen feet away. The man in front of you, a veteran, whispers a final piece of advice without turning around. Forget the noise. Just see the man in front of you. Nothing else exists. It's the best advice you'll ever get. The gate at the end of the tunnel begins to open, flooding the darkness with a brilliant, blinding rectangle of sunlight and an explosive wave of sound. It's time. You step out of the tunnel and into the light, and it's like being born into a new world. The sheer scale of the amphitheater, the Colosseum, is breathtaking and terrifying. Tiers of seats rise up around you, a mountain of humanity stretching to the sky. 80,000 faces, a blur of color and motion, are all turned towards you. The roar of the crowd is a physical force, a wall of sound that hits you in the chest and makes it hard to breathe. The sand of the arena floor is a brilliant, sun-bleached white, stained with dark patches from the morning's beast hunts and executions. This is it. The place you have been training for. The place you have been dreading. The center of the universe. You and the other gladiators begin the pampa, the opening procession. You march around the perimeter of the arena, a formal parade to show off the day's combatants to the crowd and to the editor, the sponsor of the games, who is seated in his imperial box. You hold your weapons aloft. It's a moment of supreme, theatrical pageantry. You are a soldier on parade, the priest in a solemn rite, and a product being advertised all at the same time, chanting the names of the famous champions among you. The procession halts in front of the editor's box. According to a popular story, this is the moment where you are supposed to raise your arm and utter the famous line Ave, Imperator, Moritarior tis a lute and hail. Emperor, we who are about to die salute you. However, historians are now largely in agreement that this is a misconception. This phrase is recorded only once in Roman history, by the historian Suetonius, and it was uttered not by professional gladiators, but by a group of condemned criminals who were being forced to fight a mock naval battle on a lake for the Emperor Claudius. Professional gladiators, who had a chance of survival and saw themselves as skilled athletes, would likely have considered such a statement to be undignified and fatalistic. The reality of their salute was probably something more professional and less dramatic, a simple acknowledgement of the sponsor, but the myth persists because it is so powerful. The preliminaries are over. The pairings are announced. You watch as the first pair of gladiators takes their position in the center of the arena. The crowd's roar subsides to a low hum of anticipation. A trumpet blast signals the beginning of the fight. And then there is only the sound of metal on metal, of grunts of exertion, and the occasional, explosive roar from the crowd when a significant blow is landed. You watch, your heart pounding. This is your final lesson. You are watching a real fight with real consequences, just moments before your own. You see the techniques you practiced, the strategies the doctoress taught you, all playing out in a deadly high-speed dance. Then, it is your turn. Your name is called. You walk to the center of the arena, your opponent taking his place opposite you. You look at him. He is a man just like you, his eyes, visible through the slits of his helmet, wide with the same mixture of fear and adrenaline as your own. You might recognize him from the scenery bearer, or he might be a complete stranger. It doesn't matter. He is the only thing that exists in your world right now. The roar of the crowd fades into a distant, meaningless hum. The advice of the veteran in the tunnel comes back to you. Just see the man in front of you. The trumpet sounds. You raise your shield, your knuckles white. You lift your sword, the cool, balanced weight of the steel of familiar comfort in your hand. You have been through the fire of the ludus. You have endured the pain, the humiliation, the endless, brutal repetition. You have been broken down and rebuilt for this exact moment. You are no longer a farmer, a prisoner, or a debtor. You are a gladiator. You take a breath, and then you charge, moving forward to meet your fate on the blood-soaked sand. The world softens around the edges now. The roar of the crowd, once so sharp and deafening, melts into a gentle, continuous hum, like the sound of a distant ocean. The bright, harsh glare of the sun on the sand fades into a warm, golden light, and even that begins to dim, the world slowly dissolving into a comfortable, peaceful gray. The weight of the helmet on your head and the shield on your arm simply vanishes, replaced by a feeling of lightness, as if you are floating in warm, still water. The tension in your muscles, the ache in your bones, the frantic pounding of your heart, it all just releases, letting go in a long, slow, easy sigh. You are drifting now, carried on a gentle current. The conflicts and struggles of the day, the demands of the trainers and the cruelty of the system, all feel very, very far away. They are just echoes now, faint and unimportant, like a story you heard a long time ago about someone else. The need to fight, the need to survive, has been replaced by a much deeper, much more pleasant need, the need to rest. You can feel the pull of a deep and profound stillness, a place of perfect quiet and calm. There are no more commands to follow, no more schedules to keep. There is only this slow, peaceful drift into a soft and welcoming silence. Your thoughts begin to slow down, stretching out, becoming smooth and unhurried, flowing like a lazy river towards the sea of sleep. Let the current take you. There is nothing else you need to do.